appreciate it. And this is the first workshop we are trying out. I've been doing this with the tablet now for 7 years. And I thought it's time now, because of COVID, that this is a really good way to entice people to continue hand drawing. I gave a lecture in November at Guelph University, which Nadia kindly put on YouTube. So that gives you a good precedence for what I've been doing, researching with drawing and about how I teach and so on. So this workshop is really going to focus on actually drawing together. But before I do this, I want to put some kind of basic theory out there, because I think it's important to always start with some basic thought theory to get going. And so first, I think it is important that you don't be afraid. This is for the bachelor degree undergraduate course at Guelph, and anybody else who's interested. Drawing is, people are afraid of drawing because they see these beautiful representational drawings. And I think this is one of the biggest issue. And what I'm trying to teach you guys now is a bit different. So landscape architecture is changing, not just due to COVID, but to the representational tools we are using today. So when I was a student 35 years ago, we were taught by hand. And today we still teach by hand. And I think it's still an important tool, but we use really digital tools now to draw. So the representation has changed in the way hand drawing also has changed by that, because now we can use the tablet to draw. But it's not really hand drawing, and we'll go into this later on. But what I'm going to talk about is 3 points: why hand drawing, what we can hand draw, and how. And we will do some exercises. And the reason why the tablet is so important, it has amazing additional benefits for drawing. For example, you can switch on the audio, you can make a video with an animation, which we're going to do today, really quick, without editing, right on the tool, so we can send it out. And it saves you time. Time is money when you're practicing. And photography, all these are integrated in the tablet. And drawing, for me, foremost is a thinking tool in all the 6 design phases, which I'm going to briefly talk about as well. And then later on, representational drawings come. And I think this is the biggest fear of many students. They think they have to immediately draw these amazing, beautiful drawings, but that's the final design, while drawing at the beginning is a thinking tool. And I'm trying to give you some ideas how I would go about this today. And today we use 3D digital modeling, like rhinoceros, rhino, we call it, and the tablet. So my idea for thinking hypothetically today, the way we should be going is, we should use the digital tool with paper in combination, and then switch right to 3-dimensional drawing, modeling. And that's why I call the workshop first thinking tool using the tablet, and then use 3D modeling, BIM. And BIM means building information modeling, which is standard in Europe now. I will briefly say what that is. And I think we could call it LIM, landscape informational modeling. We don't have that yet, but in Europe also BIM is used for landscape architecture drawings. And what it basically does is, while you draw on the computer and you decide the wall should be, instead of 20, 30 centimeters thick, the computer not only changes the wall, but it also changes the specs and the costing at the same time. So that is what BIM does. And I think we in the future will have to adapt. In North America, BIM is also used in buildings, but not so much yet in landscape. So most important, I reiterate this, is don't be afraid. And you will see with the hand drawing, I'm going to teach you that you can start to see the world 3-dimensional, because landscape architecture is a holistic system. These are holistic system working together. It's alive. Climate, soil, rain, all these things are alive. It's not static like a building. And so this is very different. And that's the why we have to represent it and use drawing in a very different way. But this is just the beginning. So we are trying this, and if it works, then that's good. But one thing I want to say, drawing cannot really be taught, but can be practiced. This is a quote by Roehr, one of the most prolific landscape architects and hand drawers. Drawing cannot be taught, it can only be practiced. So it is, in the end of the day, you yourself who need to practice. And now a shout out to 2 really good Instagrammers who were frustrated that they were only taught digital over the last 20 years, who then taught themselves hand drawing and now use Instagram to teach hand drawing. One group is called Linescapes, and the other one is called Sketch Like an Architect. One group is called Linescapes, the other one is called Sketch Like an Architect, and that man is called David Drazil. The other couple of landscape architects, and they do amazing online presentations to draw. So now let's start right away. Why do we draw? Why do we draw? Why do we hand draw? We hand draw because if this is a person, there's the pen, there's the paper, there's the plan. What happens here, doesn't matter how this person looks. What happens here is this is a multi-sensorial experience. So the hand draws on the paper that makes sound, the scratching of the pen. The pen may be made out of wood, it may be smell, so it's multi-sensorial, physical because the hand is moving, and cognitive because the brain. There is a constant interaction from the brain through the pen to the paper, and it's fast. So it introduces the arm, and it introduces the movement of the arm, and it introduces the movement of the pen. And basically the pen is an extension of the brain. The pen is an extension of the brain. And I think this is really important. So what you are doing, or what I'm doing right now with you guys, I'm visualizing my oral thoughts. I'm visualizing. And as I said, it's a multisensorial experience, scratching on the paper, and then the same would be on the tablet. It would be ticking on the tablet. There wouldn't be a smell of the pen, which it was in the old days with ink or pencil, but the movement of the hand is still there and the cognitive movement. So that's a really important part. And what also is obviously important is the sight. So 4 senses come into play, but we always think about sight first, but actually the others are as important. And I think that is really important. So this is the reason why we draw by hand. And now what has happened is it has switched. But before I talk about this, first I want to say hand drawing is a decision-making tool. It makes decisions, and decisions are good. So if you draw anything, even a line, it's a decision you make. And because of that decision you make, you can then look at that decision and say it's good or not good, or I have to change and so on. But if you don't draw things out, visualize it for yourself, it's very difficult for your professors to actually give you feedback. So the other one is that this is the guy sitting on his keyboard. Here's the keyboard, keyboard, and there's the screen, and there's the drawing. This is something very different. This is processing. A computer processes what you say. So text, hold on, I write it small, text plus drawings are processed. They are processed. So what happens here is, in your head, you think about what's happening, and then you use the typing tool, you type it into the computer here, and then you see it on the screen. But what is not happening is the movement, the physical action, touch is happening by typing into the keyboard, but it is not the same. So it's different. You're giving commands through typing, and that's different. It is never as fast as hand drawing. Hand drawing will always be the fastest. And I think that's a really important part to start. So to reiterate, hand drawing is fast, while when you use a computer, you are processing. You should read a really important paper by John May. The paper is called Everything is already an image. Go online and you will find this paper, John May, and he talks very openly about how John May, everything is already an image, how drawing is important and how it has changed and evolved from being just hand drawing. But I think it is important to do both. So what should we draw? So the second question is what? What should we draw? Well, ideas, observations, facts, diagrams, charts, experiences, visions, context, for example, of grading the land, and so on. So the tablet gives you the chance to draw these different things. And I give you some examples, really quick ones, really quick. A really simple one, a diagram of a hill, and then you do cut and fill. You are taking this soil and you filling it here. Maybe there's a retaining wall, and you showing this to the mayor of a city, and you want to animate this. And then you could draw this same drawing with later on I will show you with this button up here, which allows you to record, and then you can animate this drawing instead of having a static drawing like this, and explain to somebody like a mayor really quickly how cut and fill works. Basically, animation helps to demonstrate, animate to demonstrate, or animate to communicate. I think that is really, really important. And I think one of the major parts. Another one, for example, is, I think that's really important. That is, if you draw a section, let's say here, this is a section, and then you draw buildings on here. And then you add a different color, let's say blue, and you show sea level rise. So you could just show this is the normal sea level, and then you could integrate and say, well, if we don't do anything, we continue like that, it will flood the coast. And then you could say, well, dear mayor, we can change this. If we go back, you can, that's the other good thing, you click the button and then you're back to normal. And then you could say, no, if we are adding a, here, some kind of dike system or whatever, let's start with something simple. Let's say a dike, like first of all, we have to switch the color, go back, switch the color, and then go back. You can just erase it and then go back, and then can say we can put in a dike, all right, or a nice elegant dike. So it gradually, that dike could also be planted. And then we go back into using blue. Let's take a lighter blue. And then you can explain to the mayor by just adding this, how the dike could start to protect the flooding. And this whole thing could then later on, and we do this in an exercise in a minute, be animated. And I think it's important that you, when you draw, that you think about that, and you can see how quick that goes. You don't need to do much editing. You just press this button at the top here. We do that in a minute in a little exercise, and then you can immediately draw an animation. And when you animate a system like that, which is moving, then it is much easier for somebody who is not used to this to understand how that works. Now, I think the most important, and this is where what I want to teach you, this is the first thing I just taught that also in first year in the MLA, is the cube method. It came about through my Seeing Environment course, and everybody said, Daniel, you need to continue teaching this. So the cube method, and this is really useful for landscape architect. It's a kind of digitalized tablet image, but X-ray. So this is, let's say your site is here. This is your site. Make it simple at the moment. But in landscape, if this is the site, and let's say on this site is a building. That's the building. Landscape is contextual. So it is not just about this site, which is this, and the building. it is about everything around it. So I teach the students, please extend the cube, extend and understand the context. And this little drawing will help you for everything. Why? Because now you can look at all the different layers. You can look at the soil. You can look at the birds. You can look at the clouds and the rain pattern. You can look at, and I can show you this with the blue tone. You can look at how the rain lands on the soil and then drains into the soil, into the groundwater table, which is around here. And we can record all this, but what this does is it makes you think three-dimensional with X-ray eyes about the landscape. By the time you've built up your Rhino system, you're on the site, for example, or in a coffee shop after you visit the site, this is much quicker than putting it in a Rhino model. You can do that later, but for making notes of the site at site immersion at the site immersion phase, which I'm going to talk in a minute, the 6 phases of designing. This is an amazing tool in all 6 design phases, from site immersion, recording, analysis, synthesis, and then ideation, and then the different designs. This is called the cube method. My class and I called it the cube method. And somebody just asked, so I just developed that over the years, designing. When I was a young student, this is how I visualized everything around me, because my professors taught me, Daniel, it's not just about your garden. It's about what is around the site. So for example, if there's a fence, and here is a hedge, all right, then the rainworm underneath, he doesn't care about the legal. He will go underneath. But the fence, if there's a person in the garden, or the hedge may have a height that the person cannot see the other side of the fence, or it's lower that he can't see. So what this tool does, it visualizes 3-dimensionally, contextually, perfectly at the small, the garden, and the medium-sized garden and park scale, the projects you're designing. It helps you immensely. So for example, we could go back and we could also then go back and say, do another one where I just repeat this because it's good. And by the way, this is all recorded, so you can look at this and draw this yourselves, but it's basically a simple axle at 40 degrees angle, but freehand, as you can see, freehand. Just draw the cube and then draw in your principal site somewhere here in the middle, let's say. And then also what you can think of is like, you know, about your trees and their stems, and that there's a root ball. And how big is the root ball in relation to the canopy? Normally we know the size, the dimension of the canopy, the radius of the canopy is the same as the radius of the root ball, so to protect them. So as a teaching and learning and thinking tool, this is the most important tool, I think, first degree professional landscape architecture students should use. The other thing is the sun. Let's say this is north here, and the sun does that, or whatever way around it is, but it helps you to immediately think about sun and shade, or the sun is on this side and it goes this way, whatever way around you are thinking, wherever north is, both is possible. But I think it's important that you think, let's just go back and say, for the sake of it, this is north is here, and if north is here, this is the east, and the sun does this during the day, and then the shade of the tree goes this way. So it helps you immediately to think the basic issues, and it's much easier to explain, and particularly in the context. Landscape architecture is always designed in the context. And I think using this tool digitally on a computer like an iPad, and as you can see, I go back all the time to reiterate or teach or correct. This is so much faster and very, very efficient. So it's called, I call it an X-ray tool of the environment, of seeing or visualizing, seeing or visualizing the environment. I think environment. So I think that's really important for you to say. And this helps at all scales, by the way. So that is crucial when you design and draw. So why I'm starting with this is because I think it is important that you start not being afraid. And now while we were doing this last semester, the students also came up and said, Daniel, I could never draw architecture quickly, but this helps me to do that as well. So let's say this is the site here. You can easily then say, let's say if it's a simple building, you know, we start with a simple building. And it helps you to easily draw a simple building with the windows here. And there's the roof, the green roof. This is the roof. And then you have the clouds, and then you can immediately, again, start thinking about the green roof and, making this a green roof and how this works as a system. But what it does immediately, it helps you to spatialize your thinking processes. So this is the first and very important tool to learn for you. And we have 20 minutes into the lecture. So the first thing I would like you to do before we do this, however, is we start very, very simple because this is the second tool we then use. But before we do this, this tool always goes together with a section. And this section is actually the most important design tool. So before we go and draw this together, I just show you the section again, just to make sure all of you guys understand why this section is important. And a really good example to show why this section is important is this. Let's say this is a landscape, a contour, the topography, all right? And there is a house here, and it has a flat roof, and it has a green roof. And there's the windows. So if you draw a person, always draw a person right away. Then you can see I have to correct this person. This is wrong. I made a mistake. This is about one. A person is always about 1.8 meters. And you see, I'm not perfect either. So I drew the house first. So you can see I used the person as a correction tool. So I go back, actually person is much smaller. If this is a window and this is a door, that's about right. That's about right. Okay, you see, I use the person like you guys should be using, and that's about right for the tree. If this is a 2-story building, let's do it like that. Now, why is this important in landscape? And I will show you, I take a blue color, and then there is the cloud, and it rains. It rains. It rains on the roof. The roof then accumulates the water. There you go. And after a while, the roof is saturated, and then the water needs to go somewhere else. And then you can design like a downspout. Well, again, you need to go back to black, switch black, or really black, go back to the little eraser, and then go back, and then put in a downspout, okay? And that downspout doesn't go into the soil, it goes here. And then there's a little runnel, and maybe we can create some kind of dike system. We grade this a little bit here. And then what we can do is we can put the water now is saturated, and now it will run the runnel down into this beautiful swale system where it will fill up. And then at a certain amount, obviously that during that time, it starts to drain into the ground, but at a certain amount that will flood over. So we either then have to have a overflow, and I have to draw that again in black, switch on black, we draw the overflow, and then that overflow would go maybe into a sewage pipe. So all these wonderful LID systems need an overflow. Or we say, no, it's not what we want. We want another overflow swale. So this goes over, and then this is another swale. So in plan, and this is why this is a thinking tool, in plan, then you could draw this system here. This is the green roof. This is the building from above. There's your tree. There's another tree. And then there, let's say this is the downspout, and there's a beautiful runnel down here into the first swale system. And then there's this dike. We've decided there needs to be some kind of dike. And obviously the contours are here. And then the contours go like that. And then in this, and then there could be another one if you wanted, another one. So you have to change the contours and so on. But what I'm trying to show you is here, you can then immediately draw your, so you can use the blue. So this is saturated, goes down into my runnel and then fills up that first swale. And when that is full, then it fills up the second, and then it goes maybe into the sewage system. But what I'm trying to show you with this little example is the section is key in any design, because in landscape architecture, we work holistically. We work with systems. We don't just draw and come up with ideas. And the section helps you, as you could see right now. I make mistakes too. So always draw the person. And what I always do also with the person is I draw a line. So I know this is about 180. So it gives me a sense. So this little assignment already has shown you, and you look at my drawings, they're not great. It's not about drawing precisely. It's a thinking tool. And then you can start annotating swale 1, overflow, swale 2, overflow. So you can actually get your professor to see how you're thinking about it and annotate, what I always say to my students. Or this also retains a little bit, and that my research has been on green roofs, that's why I'm using it. But I think it's particularly anything with water, this animation is good. And now what we're gonna do is, because I want to start simple, is I show you a quick drawing and we will do it together. So I will go on my library, and I must just check that I show you the right drawing. 1 second. I have it all listed for myself. I think it is this one here. So this is what we're going to draw together. This is a simple animation, very, very simple, but very useful. And you don't need any edit. We do this together now. And it shows you the growth from a seed to a plant with the flowers. It's very simple. And we, in this case, I use the pencil, but we will use the black one. So how do we do this? So that is very easy. And we start simple because I think it's important that everybody learns slowly instead of overwhelming. So the most important is this button up here to record, okay? So, but before we do this, what I would say is when we start drawing this, obviously you can use also the different layers. So you can have a base layer and then like with AutoCAD and then switch these on so you don't have to always repeat all the different drawings. I do this obviously when I do my projects, but for now we just, to make it simple, we draw together a line and then we draw together a line. We start like that. And then we press this button, which I'm pressing now. And then I do this. This is the hand throwing the seed to the ground. And then you can see the seed first gets little roots, bigger roots, little shoots, and gets bigger, little shoots, little bigger, and then bigger, bigger. And you can see how it slowly gets bigger. And if you need a breather, you press the button and it stops. And you can see save to the photo library or not. Or it gives you a minute to rest, to think, and then you continue and say, okay, then if you're ready again, you go, and then this goes. So you can do this, see, it goes, and then there's little leaves. Suddenly this springtime is coming, the leaves are coming. And then also They're slowly, the flowers are coming out, just like that, okay? You can make a bit more leaves and draw that like that. And then you can see, without any ado, so there's the little drawing, you can also give it a bit of that. And then we stop this and we save this to the library. And then we go there and it should be there at the end. There you go. And you can see a quick drawing. What you have to do is you have to think first how to draw it best. And I think that is important, but otherwise that's what it does. And I think it's important to do it one more time. The hand is not very good, but it doesn't matter right now because it's not what this is about. I'm intentionally drawing rough. It's about the process for you to learn. So this is a very simple exercise. And what I would like to do is I would suggest we do this now together. And then after that, we have a little break for 5 minutes. And then we're going to continue with more complex stuff. So I will go back to the drawing. And here's the drawing. So you have a good sense how to draw that. So try that yourself. I give you a few minutes. And what we will do in the second half, some of you can show that you can show your drawing. A couple of you can screen share who are not afraid. And that's what I always do with my classes, to have some of you to do that. But this is why this app here is so useful to use. By the way, this app, just that you know, is the Sketchbook app. It's free, or it costs $3 or something. This is the thing, and I can see some of you having some problems with the recording tool. What you can also do, depending on what tablets you have, you can record your screen. So after the class, what I would highly suggest is you can go on your tablet and try out and look at what kind of recording devices there are. I use the iPad Pro 4 that is integrated in there, and it's very simple. And if we would use Procreate, it's a different button you press, but in the principle, it's the same. And I'm intentionally using a tool which is simpler to use. So I would like you to draw this for a few minutes and play with this. And then we continue. So I give you 2-3 minutes, and then who doesn't want to draw can stop. And then we're going to continue, and I will show you more ways how to draw other things and how we can animate the cube. Okay, does that sound good? So I give you 3-4 minutes to try to draw this. But what I will do is I will do this with you again, just to reiterate this, that everybody is clear. So what you have to do is just draw yourself a simple soil base line, and then you press that button, and then there's the seed, and you show the throwing action, because it's an animation. This is not about beauty, it's to explain something to something. And this is also very different. And you have to really understand how a plant grows, but you can, and that goes with everything you want to animate. You need to understand the way, and then write yourself a script, maybe on paper first, and then you can animate it. Why I do this like that, it saves so much time, and the communication, what I want to communicate is efficiently there. And there's the leaves. And it's not about beauty, it's about communication. And what you can also do, you can also switch the color and make it a rose, you know, really quickly give it some kind of color and so on. So there you have it. And I think that's a really important way to start. And you can see me switching. You need to go in the top right box to actually activate the black again. Otherwise it stays in the color you have selected. So I give you 2 minutes to 2-3 minutes to try this. To get into this mode. I think it's really important to do. Is there any questions while people are doing this, I'm happy to answer. Anybody has a question? I know there's 35 in the chat. We will do those at the end. We have a lot of time, so don't worry about that. But if there's anything you would like to ask, you can do it. Otherwise, I will continue very soon. So try this. And I think it's important that, and you can see this in the way I draw, the loose drawings there. I try to really draw without getting stressed, because these drawings, and that's what I'm going to briefly talk about next, are part of the design process. So the design process, and in my new book, I talk about this, starts with site immersion. Site immersion, that's when actually design starts, not when you draw. Then you recording of the site, then you analyze the site, then you synthesize the site's information. Then you have ideation, the ideas. Ideation comes from the word edein, the Greek word to see, and then you have your final design or designs, yeah. And the whole process, it goes back and forth. In my book, I have a whole diagram. I'm not going to go too much into detail with this, but what is important, I can show you that in a minute, is all of them need hand drawing. And the cube I showed you, that cube method I showed you, and the section of the house, they can be used particularly here and here for recording and understanding an existing situation and site. And then you can, as I drew you with the water flow, think about, it already starts, what do I do with the water? Do I put it in a drain or do I put it in a swale? You saw that in my little sketch diagram. The cube is also very valuable for analysis and synthesis when there's all the different layers you have to think of: soil, what's underneath, groundwater table, topography, the sunlight. And that little cube makes you think about all these things. And then the synthesis and ideation is where you have your ideas, like I did, 1 swale, 2 swales, and then you create a final design. In the final design, of course, we will use Rhino now. And this is my argument. I say for the first 5 parts, it is really important to use hand drawing. And then the final design, you can put in the Rhino model, but you can still use this tool I'm trying to explain to you. And I think what is also important is when you think about these 6 phases, the first thing is, and this is so important, you can document your site impressions and perceptions. How do you feel about the site emotionally, multi-sensorially, multi-sensory or multi-sensory? So with the 5 senses: smell, touch, taste, and sound. And then you can do drawings, like I've shown you, drawings, plan, section, orthographic drawings, axometric, like the cube, or you can use diagrams, and mapping, and video. We have just done a little one. And you could also take the whole screen, which is a more advanced lecture. We are not going to do it this time, where you take the whole screen and talk to the audio. You can do an audio recording on your tablet while you talk. And that's great when you give instructions on site, or you have a little movie you want to do. So you can do audio recording. And I think though, and you can obviously do the video. So I think it's really important to think about those things. And since COVID, those things are extremely important. And I just show you this diagram from my book, because that will explain more clearly. Here it is, what I mean. And you can see how these are interlinked. And this is important. So the tablet is used from site immersion right down to ideation. I think that is really, really important. And you can see this is a process which goes back and forth. So it's a very complex process to think about. So I hope that makes sense. So what I would like you to do now, having learned this, and I think this would be a really good exercise, is you have a few minutes to do this, maybe from memory where you are. I've done this with my class and they really enjoyed doing this. In the house where you are right now, think about what roof type do you have? Is it flat, pitched, or one-sided pitched? And then think what happens with the rainwater from that roof when it goes into the ground. Does it go into a pipe? Or does it go into a swale, etc.? And what I would like you to do is draw a diagram where you observe from your memory of the house you live in, what kind of roof type you have. Let's say it's a flat roof. And then maybe there's an entrance area, a garden, and there's the street, and there's the car. And ask yourself, where does the water go when it hits the roof? Let's say it's a flat roof. Does it go into a drain and then underneath the street? Or does it go in the drain goes onto the soil, and is there a kind of a swale system? The idea with an exercise like that is that you observe and document and record what happens close to your house or what happens around you. So this hand drawing, these animation drawings will help you to think about those things. So the same thing as you could do this again, and then as I've done, I will discard this movie. But what you can do is you can then again animate this. And for example, when you have drawn this basic drawing, then go in and draw with the blue color, for example, the water flow. So to do this again, what we will do is I will repeat it and we will do it as an animation so you see how that is done. And then I would like you to have 10 minutes, and that's the break time then, where you do this yourselves. And then we continue. I have a few more assignments I would like to show. So what we're going to do, we do it together really slow, and then you do your own. This time, we're going to activate the different layers. So here are the layers. So we're going to do the base, and then I do with blue, the water, and we can then change it and don't have to always redraw the drawing. So the first thing you do is you draw a section of the site. We start with a simple site. You draw your house, and then obviously maybe it's a 2-story house. It has a foundation, and it has a ceiling. There it is, and it has a window. It has a window, and it has a green roof. And there is a downspout, and the downspout in this case, in my house, goes like that. And then the water goes in a runnel and into a swale. And then it goes, and then the swale is finished, and then we have a footpath, and there's the road with the car. All right, there's the road with the car. And just for scale, we learned that we draw a person. Again, this person I'm not happy with. People is very, very difficult. So don't worry, don't despair. First, the dot of the head, then the body, and then the feet, and maybe some arms and a dog. So here we are. And then you go in and switch to the second layer and switch color. And then you can draw the rain. And we use a color which is actually legible. I think it's which is legible on the drawing. So there you go. So here's the cloud, And now, before we do this, this is really important, go back, I go back. We switch the button at the top. We switch the button, okay? So I'm just gonna move that. We switch the button on, and then we create the cloud, and then we create the rain. The rain, and this is how you draw it. You draw the lines back and forth, slowly fill this up. And when this is saturated, the roof is at field capacity, the water runs down into the runoff. You can see it fills slowly the swale, and while it does that, it also goes into the drainage. And in this case, this is calculated in such a way that even for really serious events, this would work. Additionally, you could add, and you could stop your movie. Additionally, you could then add, if you want, stop the movie and think about that. How do you get the overflow safety of the water? So you could go back and draw quickly. And that is actually also good to show this animated, an overflow pipe into the existing sewage. And this is all animated, so it can continue, and then you continue with your blue. And then you just say this continues higher, and then it flows into here, into this existing sewage system as an overflow. And then you stop, save it, and then you can watch it. And I think it's important. You can look at the last movie here, and there you go. You see how it moves and how the water moves, and then you can, and you see I'm thinking while I'm animating. And that, if you show this to a mayor of a city to explain them how important LID is, they will understand it. So I think it is important to think about those things when you design, that landscape is moving, it's not static. And the same is with the trees, etc. They grow, and you can show this growing as well, how that grows and how the plants grow. So the next exercise after the break, we'll talk about this. So I'm going to go back. So there you go. I leave it up while we have a few minute break, a 3 minutes break, and then I will come back. Nadia, is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. So I'll pause this recording, and then I'll start that
in
back
2 or
up.
3 minutes. We start, and the students can look at this and draw it. And the idea why I want, you can hit record now. And so the break is over, guys, and you can see because I drew the with 2 layers, I have to go down to actually remove the second layer as well. But so you can see it can be used like in the AutoCAD layering system. You can use different layers to do your drawings. But I think what is important, I want to just show you a couple of more animations, because I think it will help you to understand how we draw as a whole. And I have a couple of drawings I want to show you just to give you a sense. So this is another one which I think is really important for first year, grading and drainage, to visualize the land. So you don't have to have the grades right, but spatially you can see the swales around the terrace where the building is positioned, and I'm putting in the road, and around it decides the water. And you can see it helps me to design the land and the retaining wall behind, and then the rain comes in a minute, and you can put a green roof on the building. But what it shows you is this kind of animation helps you to think 3-dimensionally about the problems, this is the situation, and then the rain comes, and it will go around the retaining wall, and then around, and also the way the road can be drained, and even the roof of green roof can also help to drain the land. And I think so you can actually see, you need to understand the context in it, and the animation purpose of the water helps you to design your grading visually, and then you go on the drawing and decide how big is the swale, how wide is it, and so on. So this kind of drawing helps you to do that. I think that's really important. The second one is also very important. When you are in a building, what is the experience of the garden outside? So when you have a client and you can see the landscape in the background, you can explain with an animation like that, slowly while its animation is going, what's happening in the garden. And as you know, many clients can't read plans, but they can read a perspective or an animation. And this helps them to understand, aha, you're doing the fence lower so you can borrow the landscape behind as a view. So you can use these kinds of animations also to explain what's happening in the garden and how the garden is relating to the interior. In Canada, 80 to 85% we are inside. So this kind of drawing helps you to tell the client or explain to the client how you, maybe the height of the fence at the end, the different back and foreground planting, and how that experience then panders out. And by gradually animating the drawing and giving it color, you can also discuss with him the color of the fences, the color of the planting, etc. So this kind of animation, you can see it is slowly, and you can see I'm going in again and again and highlighting and making things bolder in the front and more detailed. So it gives that depth. And in the background, the landscape, the further back, the less depth it has. And you can see it because it's animated. It gives a client a really good way to communicate. And then you can go in the drawing, which I'm doing here, and start explaining things. This drawing is not a representational drawing. It's a communication drawing for the client, what's going to happen in his garden. And it's very helpful, I think, for designing. And then another one, which is really useful, is planting. I teach planting right now as a planting studio, the second studio, and you can see the plan is at the bottom. And then when I design a planting, I always have the plan and the elevation and the person beside it. So you can see, aha, you get the scale of the planting in relation to the wall behind, and you get an understanding. And I'm only drawing the forms of the planting. This kind of animation is just explaining the impression. And I think what we can do also is you can show how the plants grow in a perspectival view. And I have an exercise I want to do with you to convey that. But the idea behind these animations is that you see and you communicate much clearer also to your professors what you are thinking. And it's all hand drawn. It's fast, it's efficient, it's quick. And then you have it there as a drawing. And I have two more, because landscape architects also design and this in the landscape. So this is a large scale landscape in British Columbia, and it just shows you how to draw a landscape. So this is a tutorial perspectival video I made for students to learn how to draw landscape. And you can see how gradually this is drawn. And you can also see I annotated. These are all on my blog, so you can see these. But I thought it's important for you to see all this material is out there to use, and you see how simple, and the graphics I use, the simpler the better. And then the same thing for palms, for a desert planting. This is in Palm Springs. And you can see that the more in the foreground, the more depth. And here I use, this is the Procreate tool, which only runs on $9 or something on the app, on the iPad, sadly, but it's much more sophisticated. You can see you can smudge the pencil and so on. So I think it's important for you to see what kind of possibilities there are. And then this just is a still drawing just to show you. These are drawings I do in the evening, but I think it's important for you to see. I also train constantly all the time. It's important to do that. And what we're going to do now is, I thought very carefully what would be interesting for you to do. And first we're going to do the cube exercise, and then we do a 1-point perspective. But I think the cube is the most important and valuable. Sorry, I have to change to black. And then I do this. The most valuable is to draw the cube again. And the reason is, I think it's really important in first year to understand that landscape always only is designed in context all the time. So I want you to also draw this cube, and really think about, let's say this is the building here, really simple building. It's in here, and you can see it's an axle, very simple. But again, this is the ground. This is the ground plane. But we could say, okay, this ground plane maybe has a slope. So for example, if this has a slope, a slight slope, you can draw that in here. Let's say there's a slight slope. You could even also start thinking about the grading of the land. So you could put in the contours. So it helps you, if these are the existing contours, this is the existing slope. And then what it does is, for example, if you wanted, this is a green roof here. This is on top, there's the green roof. And you wanted to design a swale, which is architecturally in the same form as, let's say, being German, I like sort of very formal design, often not always, but there's actually how the slope goes. The existing slope, the building is put in, and we want to put in an LID. I want to put in a architectural, a swale, which is more like an architectural form. Then I can actually, and this is the cool thing, go in and make, first think about, oh, where I'm going to put the contours. Am I going to put the contours around like that? Or am I going to put the contours behind? So if I put the contours in front, then I have a little wall here. Or if I put the contours behind, I have a little wall here to keep this area for a swale system. So it helps you to actually really think three-dimensionally. Grading is more important than planting. Cornelia Hahn-Oberländer, wonderful landscape architect you all know from Canada. Grading is more important than planting. And with this kind of cube, you can start really thinking about those things and start designing also immediately, let's say, it's the retaining wall at the top, or you can do a section of this. We know that this is sloping. So this formal swale here has a retaining wall here, or it has the retaining wall here, and it slopes from there, depending where you put your contour. So what it helps you to do is it helps you to really visualize and use the different colors as a functional tool to start thinking in detail. And I think the grading is such an important part because it is spatial, it's three-dimensional, and particularly in first and second year for undergrad, first degree professional, MLA, first degree professional students, it's really difficult to see. And the cube helps just really quickly. Of course, in the Rhino model with a grading model, you can do this also. But at the beginning, in the design phase, when you start thinking in the site immersion phase of an existing site, and you're trying to apply this, this is a really useful tool to use. So I think, I hope that helps. So I would like you to, in your own time later on, think about your house again and think about the cube and use it and draw something like that to help you think about that. So you've learned, just to reiterate, the cube is used as a grading tool. So just one more exercise just to make it clearer. So here is the slope. This is the slope of the site. There's the slope. You can see this is all soil obviously underneath, but this is the sloped site. And then the contours go through here. Okay, let's say this is a sloped site that goes through here. And then you say you want to design an amorphic swale. Let's say you think about the form. And then you could go in and say, okay, I will design the contours, the new ones around. And then this one maybe goes to enhance this form. And then here's a contour inside to show the depth. So immediately it helps you to visualize the grading very quickly. And because this is at a slope, it gives you the understanding, this is actually going downhill. And then you can also think how that little swale system would look like in section. You can see I just drew it roughly, but this would be the area here. So it gives you a really good tool. I repeat this again and again. You can play with this yourself. It's just a wonderful tool. I call it my X-ray eye tool. And now we do something I think which most landscape architects have problems with at the beginning in the one-point perspective. And to make that easy for all of you, really easy. This is your piece of paper, let's just imagine, and you go in with your horizon line. Let's say horizon line is somewhere 2/3 below and 1/3. The first thing, always draw a person, and then that gives you scale. And let's say there's a person in the foreground, the head is still on here, and you can see that immediately gives you scale. And then you can put your vanishing point on that line somewhere. I would never put it in the middle. I would always put it off center, maybe somewhere here, VP, vanishing point, and then through there, you would draw your footpath, for example. There's your footpath, very simple. And then you, what it also tells you, because at this point, parallel to the picture plane here, if you tilt this person down, it gives you a good sense. The person is 180, we said that. So this footpath here is about 2 meters, 250, 220 wide. It gives you the scaling of it already. And then you can go in and say, we are going to do some planting. And I wanted to show you this. So when you plant, and this is something I experienced a lot as a practicing landscape architect, you can draw the plants small, how they are when they arrive, or you can actually draw it even better. You can draw them. What actually happens when you arrive is they look more like this, little plants, little like that, of whatever ground cover it is. And then there's a little shrub somewhere here and a little shrub here. And they often, the client sees that, he comes to site and says, oh my God, but I ordered a big planting. And says, well, it has to grow. That's the sizes you ordered. And to prevent this, you could do a little sketch like this and then show it like that. And then press the button, you press the recording button, and then say what happens to these plants and start drawing them bigger. Just leave the old ones in there even, and maybe draw the shrubs bigger, just draw them bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you can exercise and practice this a bit. Really show the client, this is actually what it's going to look like when it's a few months in, a few years in, you know, when the planting has been in, and it looks, and you can go in and really start moving things. You can see I use the tool to also just clean things up. You can go in and just remove certain things and then go in and show this is what you're going to get at the end, a nice densely planted area. And if you want, you can go in and give it some color. Not that this is important right now, but I'm just trying to show you really quickly what's possible. You can go in and give some dark just to show the ground cover and the shade, and then you have it. And then give maybe the person also a bit of a nice green tone, light black. There you go. So it's back to black. And then you say, you know, this is the planting after 5 years. And then you press this button, you save it, and then you can go and say, go into your actual recording. And you see, this is what you get. And then over the time, it will change and it will actually be that impression. And you can start convincing a client very quickly. You can obviously spend time, which we don't have right now, but it just shows you how quickly with a tool like that, you can actually really learn a lot about how the plants change. And for me, so this tool is also a communication tool for the clients. And you can do this while you're with the client, while if you had to unwrap your computer, put the Rhino model, that's later on. But in the ideation phase, when you explain to a client, these are the sizes of the plants, but when they grow, that's the appearance, you can really start changing and showing that change, because landscape changes all the time. And in this case, the animation is also a really good tool to use. So I would like you to go in and draw something like that. So we're going to go back, and I will do this again with you, because I think it's important that you learn with these simpler versions of drawing, and then go back later on, go into the more complex ones. But what is important is that I want you to learn to animate and include that into your drawing, so it helps you to actually visualize and make the drawings much more dynamic. So we start again. This time I don't draw the outline of the page, so the horizon line is somewhere here. We will put the vanishing point, the VP, horizon line here, and then we will we will put a person in the background. It's always good, then you have the scale of the affair. So here's the person in the background. And then we have a person in the foreground here. So here you go. And he's having his dog here on the leash. And so here you go. And then you can draw nicely the footpath edge. And there is a planting here on the side. And what I would like you to do at the beginning is, you could also, before you present what I've just shown, show the final impression of the drawing. But it's always good, normally when you present drawings to a client, you show the plants at maturity 5 to 10 years in the presentation drawings when you show the client. But it is deceiving because that's not what he gets when he has the planting. And this has caused, over the years, I've had this many times, they were shocked because they just thought the instant garden is green, but it's not architecture, which you pour the concrete and it's there, it grows. And so I would like you to draw a little, let's say a little bed here. This is the size of the bed along this edge of the path. So in plan view, here's the plan, and you're drawing a little bed, and we are standing here watching that way with 2 trees, multi-stemmed trees. So the trees are multi-stemmed. So here and here in the foreground, a bit bigger. And you can go in and really draw and start thinking deeply about how you would draw. And you can see I leave the plan there just for you for explanation. And then you can go in and visualize how that looks. Sometimes it's good first to look at it, how the final layout looks like, and then go back in and draw what I've shown you to communicate what the client actually gets. But it's also good to show the client what he will get in the end. And you can see less lines is better. Always show a bit of shade that gives it a 3-dimensionality. Also make these lines always thicker, a bit bolder, so it will pop. Then you can also put some paving, or it's maybe gravel, but give it some texture. And then immediately on the shade of this person here, here's his feet and shoes. So he's walking one shoe higher than the other, and it gives it the dynamics right away. And then you can go in and you see drawing less lines is actually better, but the trees, you can go in and then give some kind of doubling up, thicken up the stems to give it a bit of a 3-dimensionality. And in the background, the trees are thinner, you don't show so much, and you give it an undershade to show the canopy below, give it a shade underneath, maybe some leaves, just some gestural leaves. And you remove this part. So there you go. And then you have a really good, a quick planting drawn. And it just shows you with very simple, less lines is actually better. And then you go in, and then you can go in with color later on, but also just a bit of gesture, so one knows that the ground cover planting is around here and covers this. And now you have your undercovered planting with the tree quickly drawn. And then you can go in and correct things if you want, or put in a little hole and show a bit of the branch coming through here. And do the same thing, understory shade, the shade underneath the canopy, like here, and really start drawing this perspectival view. And it's something I would like you to do, because I think it's a really good exercise to show what a planting will look like at the end, a representational drawing like this. Obviously, I could spend another hour detailing it further, but this is not the case. But when you show the client, that's what you should show him as well. But you should also be honest to the client, this is not what you're going to get right away. And I tell you this out of 30 years of experience. When I was practicing, we didn't have the tablet. So I didn't think about this. So in recent years, I thought this is such a great tool to communicate even better to the client. and to make him happier and better understand what's going on. The other thing is what I think is really important. You can also put underneath the root growth and indicate, you know, if this is, let's say, on a green roof, you can also think about how much space is needed for the roots. So it makes you think again, X-ray, the perspective, you can kind of make it in a section, and you can continue that here and could say what kind of layer of gravel, what under hardcore is underneath to keep the gravel, what kind of surface it is. So you can communicate all those things in that drawing as well. So I think that's really important. So I would like you to draw a sketch like that now with me, like I did. And I reiterate this one more time. I do it one more time and we do it together. And I think then after that, I'm ready for questions. I don't want to overdo it on the first one too much, but I think it is important for you to see the possibilities we have with animating. So I think what I really want to stress is the importance to see it as a dynamic learning and teaching and thinking tool more than a representational tool. One thing I do see a lot now on the internet is the garden, really amazing garden drawings. You know, they show their box and then they show their house, an amazing sophistication of rendering the trees and their layout. But they never show what's happening around. And I would highly recommend, now you have learned the cube method, always show the context, because your site needs to relate. For example, if there's a tree here that may cast shadow on your garden, that needs to be all taken into account. So don't ever just draw your site. It's just a legal boundary. Through the cube method, you have now learned to include that. So I would always start with the cube method, and the AXO method I have shown you at the beginning to draw and think about that. I think that's really, really important. So what I would like to do is now draw this together really slowly. And this is for particularly for the first and second year bachelor student at Guelph, because and anybody else, because just to make sure that it's all clear for you. You can see, draw freehand. Do not try to, and don't do that. Don't be confident with your lines. Just be confident. You know, don't, and practice lines if you like. Practice them. And if you're worried about it, you can wiggle them as well. There's lots of ways how you can go about it. But I think it's important that you try to be confident in what you do, and it shows to the client as well. So draw this as straight as you can. And then remember, the heads are always on the perspective, and then the foreground head. There you go, is the person in the foreground. And if he has a child, that would obviously be smaller. Makes sense. The guy is playing a football. And so on the arm, and and this guy has his dog. And so it's important to think about that, and then think about where the vanishing point is. And you can do that right away, and then start with that. We are not going to put curves in the path, but simple drawings. One thing you know at this point, just to repeat this, this is about 180. So the footpath, if you would tilt this person, is about 2 meters wide. So you can actually use the human scale to scale the drawing. And then put in slowly what kind of form your planting is. And one thing I can always say is keep the outline flat. Don't make it too steep. Otherwise, it looks like the drawing is falling out of the paper. The flatter, the better. And the further back, the less information you can see. And gesturally, let's put in the bed. And then start with the trees. Maybe just the simple, the canopies. And remember, most medium-sized trees start above the heads of people. So just in a section, if this is the person, a normal tree starts, the canopy starts maybe here, 2 meters or even higher. Only specific trees are going right down to the ground. Normal nursery trees, 2 meters, and then the canopy starts. So think about that. These are multi-stem trees, small size trees. So it gives you a sense of the scale, and having the horizon line here will help you to think about that. And then you go in and give the form, the planting, a form, and really less information, the better, but let the plants grow over the edge of the path. The path is two-dimensional. It doesn't exist. It's flat. The plants are three-dimensional. See, a plant is three-dimensional. The path is flat here. So when you think about it, so really draw this also three-dimensional, and then go in and give it some shade. And there you have it. You go in. Then you can start thinking about the texture of this underground, or what kind of texture these leaves have as well. And then you have your representational drawing. So maybe it's easier for you first to draw this kind of drawing first, and then go in later and do the animation drawing. So it's an addition now I would require from, if I had an office today, I would always do these kinds of communication drawings with the sections for the LID, for the stormwater management or plant growth, to show how actually landscape behaves. Any questions?
That was great, Daniel. Thank you so much. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and we can take some questions.